Well, good morning, Christian. Thank you very much for joining us today. I'm really pleased that you've agreed to speak to us about education in Austria. It's such an important subject.
Hi, good morning. In Austria, it's already evening, but good morning.
Yes, I suppose it is. Well, welcome to Perspectives on Islam. My name is Elaine Ellinger, for those who don't know me. And I'd just like to introduce you here. I have a few words to say. That you are the director of a secondary school in what's known as a hotspot area. You spent many years teaching at a Jewish school in Vienna. And with around 70% of the students coming from an Islamic background, you are deeply engaged with the subject matter, that you are politically active in the Austrian People's Party and familiar to many people through your frequent media appearances, where you are known for your clear and fact-based commentary on this issue, that you have recorded your experience in a book, which I'm happy to say I was able to read some of it in English. And your aim is to inform political decision makers about the realities facing Vienna's schools. And while many are turning a blind eye to the cultural roots of these problems, you seek to break through the denial and draw attention to an issue that urgently needs to be addressed. So I'd really like to hear what you have to say there, because, you know, around the globe, around the Western world, many people, many schools are facing the same issues. And thank you.
Yeah, I'm looking forward. I'm happy.
All right. Well, perhaps you could speak about demography. We all know there's been a huge demographic change in Europe. And how is that affecting the schools?
You know, the Islam was increasing and increasing until 2015, and then was coming a lot of refugees. So people who were named refugees, maybe they were or not. And since that time, it's really increasing the population of Islamic people. Like already it's in the primary schools, because it's just not so much people if you look at every age, but we have a very big part of our population in the young age are Islamic. So in the primary school, it's already between 30 and 40% of all in Vienna going to primary school kids are Islamic. So it's the biggest religion already, because the Catholic kids are less than 30%, about 25. And what you need to know is it's every year increasing this number of Islamic people, because they get a lot of children. You have still immigration, they get a lot of children, and the Austrian families and the Catholic families, even if they are also immigrants, are getting maybe 1 or 2 children. So it's increasing very, very quickly, the number of Islamic kids in the primary school.
Well, you know, that's also the case in Canada, in the Toronto district. At this point, the Christian children are 17%, and the Islamic are 22.5% of the student population. At least that's how they're identifying. And this has made some changes to the curriculum. Teachers are being sent on courses about Islamophobia and things like this. And they've had some issues with schools in Quebec, and also I know in the United States, with Sharia being introduced actually through teachers wanting to bring in some Islamic teaching in the public schools. Has there been any experience of that at all in Vienna?
Yes, of course. Everywhere where the biggest number of kids is of one ideology, it's changing the rules in the classroom. It's changing a lot. And also you have to accept some things. Like the last story I could hear was that in a primary school, so children less than 10 years, they made a trip to a mosque with old kids, not just the Islamic kids, all kids. And then it was a big problem not recognized by the politics, that the Catholic girl was coming home, and in her school bag, she had a hijab. And the mother was asking, what do you do with a hijab? Yes, we were at a mosque and we could learn how nice Islam is. And like begging, it's on one side the girls, on the other side the boys, and the girls have to wear a hijab, and we could try it, and then we were allowed to take it home. And I liked so much, it's so nice religion. And so it's the influence very, very big for every kid. And yes, it's changing the society.
Well, just recently there was an example of children in Italy being Catholic children from a kindergarten taken to a mosque, and it's showing a picture of them. They're all on the floor of the mosque in the prayer position. Another incident, again, it was a Catholic school in the UK, and the child is only 6 years old. And for homework, she has brought home a mosque book, and that is in her school bag. And at many of the schools, they're having something now called International Hijab Day. So instead, or World Hijab Day. So now where we used to have International Women's Day, we're having this International World Hijab Day, which was actually introduced in reaction to incidents in Pakistan, where women were having marches in trying to, in solidarity with women, trying to empower women. And the imams were coming back and saying, no, we should have a World Hijab Day. And actually, that is what is being celebrated now in Canadian schools. So actually on the side of the oppressors, rather than on the women who are trying to free themselves from these, hijabs and, inability to work and the things that are imposed on them. But I'm getting a little away from the children now. Are you finding that some of the children are being bullied? There was a story I recall about a girl saying, I'm a good girl, and no, I'm not a Christian. Like, it's just what happened with that.
Yeah, it was a story of mobbing in my school. And the girl, a very nice girl, very good German, very good marks at school, very nice, polite girl, but wearing hijab and abaya, 11 years old girl. And she was coming to me that all the other girls in the sports were throwing balls at her.
Yeah, Christian, I'm sorry to interrupt. Your speaker has gone down a little bit. I can't hear you so well.
Okay. It's better like that?
Yeah, if you could maybe turn it up a little bit. Seems to have gone quiet a bit. So we'll continue. You're telling me about the little Christian girl who's very good marks and things like that.
No, it was a Muslim girl. It was a Muslim girl.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah, a Muslim girl wearing hijab and abaya. And she was coming to me that in a sports lesson, the other girls were throwing balls at her and very hardly all the time and very bad to her. And next day, I told her to come next day because it was already evening. And next day in the morning, she was waiting for me. And the sports teacher was coming and said to me, okay, but then ask her what she said when this happened. And then I asked her, and if it's true, the teacher was telling me, because she said like this, oh, balls. And she said, why are you so bad to me? I'm not a bad girl. I'm not a Christian girl.
Oh.
And then this is showing a lot, because then I was asking, sorry, but I'm a Christian. Am I a bad man? Oh no, Mr. Director, you're so nice to us and you're helping and you're so good. And I said, yes, but I'm a Christian. So it was not meaning personally. It was the basic behavior, the basic knowledge of the Islamic girls, even the nice girls, is that the Muslims are good persons and the Christians and the Jews are bad persons. And this story is showing this very, very good.
Yes. Well, of course, we know that the doctrine says that that because the Christians associate Christ with Allah, that is shirk, all right, that is forbidden, and that, the same with the Jews. The doctrine is very unfavorable towards Jews and Christians. And of course, this caused something of a cultural clash. And in the UK, they have actually defined they have a program called Prevent to stop, violence and such. And in it, they define extreme right-wing terrorist ideology, what they call cultural nationalism. So it says Western people who believe that Western culture is under threat from mass migration and lack of integration by certain ethnic and cultural groups are now considered cultural nationalists, that this is extreme right-wing terrorist ideology. But the fact is that Islamic doctrine demands that Muslims not integrate, that they not take Christians as friends, that they are the worst of creatures. This is what the doctrine actually says, and demands that Muslims do not integrate. But then when people say, oh, this is a problem, this is a threat, it fractures society, now they're called extreme right-wing terrorists. So, this is just, it's an impossible situation. It's very difficult in the UK.
But it's very important what you said about the doctrine, because
Yes.
nobody in Austria, it's a very big problem, I think, in all the other Western countries also. The politicians, the journalists, they don't know the doctrine. And since I know more about the Koran and Sunnah and Hadith, the doctrine, I can find out what is behind this bad behavior of the Islamic kids. So it's very, very important that everybody is trying to learn the basic of the Islamic doctrine. And I think this is very, very important.
Yes, it is so important, because the Quran 13 times, it tells Muslims that they must not be friends with Christians, Jews, with other non-Muslims. And so when this is what they're being told, what their faith demands, and then, politicians are angry because there isn't integration and often blame the host country for that, it makes no sense at all. But this is not fair to Muslim children either. Now, there's another example, again, it's from the UK, and there's a woman who's written a little thing on X, and she says she's a school teacher. And she says in her classroom that there is a young girl who is now not allowed to take swimming. Now, in Britain, everyone learns to swim because they live on an island. There's a lot of water, and it's a life-saving, talent. You must be able to swim. And so the little girl says, no, I'm not allowed to swim because I'll have to show my hair. And this is unfair because, of course, her brothers are allowed to swim. And then there's another little girl who's not allowed to take music lessons because music is haram. It is forbidden. And in Iraq, a couple of years ago, there was an example of a 15-year-old boy who was beheaded for listening to Western music. So this is making it very difficult for the schools, for the children, for the Muslims as well as everyone else, that they're not able to participate in these activities owing to doctrine.
Yes, but it's so important to know the doctrine. For example, I have a story of a teacher of another school. He was calling me and told me that a Muslim boy of his class, he nearly raped, it was not exactly but nearly raped a girl of his class. And next day in the class, 5 girls were wearing hijab. They did not have on the day before.
Yes.
And he was asking me on the telephone, what's happening here? And I thought, yeah, it's very normal. It's protection, because it's written in the doctrine that girls with hijab, they are safe. Without hijab, they are not safe. Yes. And he was asking the girl, how is it? Why are you wearing? And they thought, yes, our fathers told us to wear now because that these things, the raping, will not come to us. And if you don't know the doctrine, if you don't accept that these things are written in the doctrine, in the Islamic papers, then you will never resolve all these problems.
Yes, it certainly is. And in some places, quite amazingly, some young women are walking with pigs because they know that pork is forbidden in Islam and that this will keep the men away from them. And some are wearing hijabs. In fact, there was a former MP of Austria only a few years ago I listened to in a news broadcast, and he was speaking about how in areas of Austria that he knows of, that women are wearing hijabs even when they go to work or when they go to school to avoid assault. And that is because of the doctrine, which says that by wearing a hijab, she will be known and not assaulted. And when you look up the tafsir, which is the commentary about that particular verse, it says that she will be known as a free woman, meaning she's not a slave to be treated like one.
Yes.
And that they will then not be assaulted. And so, of course, this makes every female a target for assault if they are not wearing the hijab. And we have certainly seen incidents of this in Cologne, in neighboring Germany, on New Year's. There were so many women attacked. And, you know, this is a new thing, you know, for Europe. Women formerly did not have these fears. You know, they were free to go walk on the street and did not need to wear a hijab. But, you know, it's particularly hard for little children, you know, not be able to swim, to have to wear a hijab, to not be, you know, allowed to, you know, sing music. And what about what's happening with Jews? There was a story about a girl saying that she couldn't say the word Judaism because of what this.
Yes, you know, it was increasing on October 7, 2023. But this story was already before, that the teacher of my school was bringing me down a girl who told that she cannot, because they were learning in history about religions, 5 big religions of the world, and she could tell just 4 religions, because the name of Judaism she could not say, because otherwise she would make her mouth dirty and she would never could clean again. So it was a nice girl, but she was very anti-Semitic, very Jewish hating. So she could not say this. I forced her to say this, and she was then crying with tears because it's so bad to say this word.
Oh no, this is so sad to hear. Yes, because this is what the doctrine teaches. You know, it says it says terrible things about Jews and throughout the doctrine. So you know, I'm wondering about, you're saying since October 7th, what other examples have you seen of this, you know, anti-Semitism in the children?
I was teaching in a Jewish school, so I'm very near to the Jewish persons.
Yes.
And already in the last month, when I meet some Jews who I know, they tell me that they have already packed their the bags, because they don't know if they can still stay in Austria or Vienna, because they are afraid.
Yes.
So what is meaning about hatred for Jews in Vienna or in Europe? We arrived already in 1983, but not from the right wing, more from the left wing also, but very, very important from the Muslim people who hate Jews and who hunt Jews and who shout killing Jews. Luckily, until now, there are no Jews killed in the German or Austrian cities, but they are afraid very much already.
Well, when you said 1983, maybe did you mean 1938, like when in the Weimar Republic? So, Yes.
No, 1983, when it was coming to the Second World War, when Hitler was coming to Germany and Austria, the
yes.
Jews were hunted.
Yes. Yes.
And now
yes.
we are coming to this time,
Yes.
back to this time, what should never come, but
Yes.
not from the right wing,
Yeah.
maybe little from the left, but not like force.
Yes.
But the Muslim anti-Semitism, the Muslim Jew hating is arriving in the middle of Europe
Yes.
in the same way like it was in the beginning of Adolf Hitler.
Yes, that's exactly what I thought you were speaking about. You said 1983, Christian.
Oh, sorry,
1938. 1938.
Sorry.
That's why I was clarifying. Yes. Yes, yeah. And that exact sort of thing has been happening here. Just terrible. And in Montreal, there was a university campus, McGill, that was occupied for an entire summer, 2 months. And there were 45 law professors that were supporting the encampment. Of course, it ended up in court, but the horror for the Jewish people in Montreal, there was a woman that she's a Holocaust survivor. She's in tears. She says, I cannot believe I am seeing this again twice in her lifetime, and such a tiny population. And it's just, they're being treated so badly. There's just not enough being done about it. There's far too much intolerance of this abuse of the Jewish people. It's just far too much. Now, back to children and the veiling. What are you seeing? Child marriage and FGM. I've heard something of that as well.
Yes, I had one girl who was married in the 8th grade. So with 15, 16 years, she was married by force with a 25-year-old man. Mm-hmm. She was from Chechnya, and they married just in a mosque, not in the city government. So the police, nobody could help me. Nobody could help the girl. There is a NGO, like the name is Orient Express. They have a lot of girls in this problem, and they are helping really good. So we could help the girl to come away from this man. But like she needed to break with her family and go somewhere where nobody knows her, and it was very, very bad. And I found out that FGM, the cutting of the woman's in like it is in Somalia, Saudi Arabia, and so on, that it arrived already in Europe. So. Some years ago, we were thinking that the parents fly to Egypt to cut their girl. Now they don't need to fly anymore. They can do it in Vienna because it's some doctors or some persons who do these things in Vienna. And the politics are not reacting how I'm expecting it, because this is... Something like this has no place in our culture.
No, it definitely doesn't. The same thing is happening in Canada now. A good friend of mine has done extensive work on FGM. In fact, I'd say he's one of the world's leading authorities, and he has discovered that there is a great deal more FGM than has previously been recorded, and has provided maps, and it's definitely showing that FGM is now happening in Canada and in Europe and in the UK. It is happening in all of these Western countries where it was not happening before, and when we talk about child marriage, for example, at a very minimum, the politicians have certainly created this situation. They have had, a massive influx such as we've never seen before from countries that have cultures that are quite different, which isn't so much of a problem as the doctrine is, the religious doctrine, the Islamic doctrine, because that is fixed and it is eternal. But for the marriages, I mean, at very least, they could demand that imams register every marriage. Why do they not do this? Because if some men we know go imam shopping, so they'll get one marriage here and one marriage there and one marriage there, and then every imam can say, well, I only married him once. But if every marriage had to be recorded, then there could be legal action taken when underage children are married off in this way.
Yes, of course.
Yes.
I try to explain this to the politicians in Austria, but they don't really react. I don't know. Maybe they think it's not a big problem, but it's really a big problem. Every year, 14, 15 years old girls are married in the mosques, and it's increasing problem also.
Yeah, and the girls, they have no protection. This isn't
Yes.
fair to them either, and many don't know that they're even entitled to any legal protection.
Yes.
In so many places in the UK, I know in the EU and even in Canada, that we have these Sharia councils, or they're more Sharia courts that are being established, where a woman will find that, they're utilizing Sharia law in terms of marriages and in terms of inheritance and things like this, so that they're not being treated equally before the law as they should be in a Western country, which is why many people come to a Western country.
Yes, and the problem is that the politicians don't know the doctrine, so they are like, it's a cultural difference.
Yeah.
But it's not a cultural difference, it's a doctrine of Islam.
Yes, it's
And you need to know this, and it is in Austria, the Socialist Party. They are very proud that they were bringing in the last 40 or 50 years many rights to the women's, because 50 years ago, also in Europe, the rights for women, they were not so good. And now it's really nearly same rights for women and men. And they don't understand that this is a big difference to Islamic doctrine, and that if we don't if we allow the Islam to change our culture, the rights of women will flow away like nothing. And it's coming already, like things that Islamic men are not giving the hand to teachers. Or, for example, short time ago, I know soccer is not a big sport in Canada and United States, but it was the big soccer Champions League final in Munich. And a very famous fighter, and these are the Islamic people, he was coming to a female sport reporter, and on the camera, she was holding the hand to him, and he said, "No, I don't give." And the woman said, "Sorry for this." It's unbelievable.
Oh, for heaven's sakes. And to say that his culture is so wrong. It's a parallel legal system. It is Sharia. It is Islamic law. It is a parallel legal system. It's a complete civilization that comes with a parallel legal system, a parallel tax system, and these things. So this isn't just culture, because, I mean, if you look at Iran, all of the different cultures that were there, and now they're all being compelled to follow Sharia, the law.
Yes.
So how about homosexuals? How are they faring?
Yes, we are in Europe. We have the Pride Month. So it's a lot of LGBTQ parade or fighting for homosexual rights. But in my school, the boys, a lot of them Islamic boys, they say this is an illness. Like it cannot happen, and every homosexual person should be killed, and this is the behavior of the Islamic boys and girls.
Well, this is what's taught in Saudi school books. You can find the Saudi school books. I have copies, and this is what it says, that homosexuals can be killed, and so can apostates. Now, we're supposed to have freedom of religion in our countries, but this is what it says. And so it's, again, this is what the doctrine says. This is what they're taught. So, this is a big problem. And, what is amazing to me is that we have, these gays for Gaza and things like that, because of this lack of understanding and teaching, which really the system has failed, not only this generation, but earlier generations in terms of education. Because if you think about slavery, for example, I have a school book a Canadian school book, and it's got the school stamp on it. It was in the Fulford Harbor School District, and it's an atlas, and it shows the Atlantic slave trade, which of course was a terrible thing, but we all acknowledged that it was a terrible thing. And it was the Brits who put an end to it. An entire civil war was fought over it in the United States. People died to stop slavery. And yet it has been ongoing in Islamic countries for centuries. The trans-Saharan slave trade, the enslavement of the Slavs and the Europeans, and as far as Iceland, there's no mention of this in the school books. So the school books present a very slanted view that the West has this terrible history and says nothing at all about the trans-Saharan slave trade. You know, and
it says. I know a history book of our schools, and there is written Mohammed tried to stop slavery. This, he got problems. And it's so stupid because, of course, until now, it's slavery in the Islamic world.
Oh, yes, and still is. Look at the Yazidi slaves trying to be
yes.
And to its great shame in Canada, a Yazidi woman, a young woman, a survivor of this sex slavery and being traded over and over. She was given a Nobel Prize because she worked with someone to actually produce a book about this subject. Well, a Toronto class wanted to invite her to their book club, and the school district said no, that they were afraid that this would introduce Islamophobia. And in saying that, they are comparing their own Muslim students and parents to,
yes.
you know, the jihadis. So this, how can they do this? This is ridiculous, you know? Of course,
yes.
you know, we should hear from people like this.
Yeah, it's happening the same in Austria.
Yeah. So what about demands for halal food, prayer rooms? And what happens at Ramadan? Are the children allowed to eat or drink?
You know that in Ramadan, already kids of primary school are fasting. And in some schools, they start school at 8 and finish at 4 o'clock. And if they are 7 or 8 years old, it's not possible already. It's very hot. Now it was in June and in May, Ramadan. Now it's going forward for some years. It will be better. But then will be again the hot season. And but Ramadan is a big problem. And for example, the end of Ramadan, I don't know in English the word, Zuckerfest, for 2 or 3 days, nobody is at school because all Islamic kids are staying home in this time. They don't come. Same in Opferfest, I don't know in English. It was 2 weeks ago. It was this Islamic days, and nobody was at school for 1 day.
Yes.
Next day was Saturday, Sunday, but they also would not come. And it's influencing everything, the Islam, the halal. They are asking for praying rooms at schools. And I very strictly, I say, no, in my house is no place for praying, pray at home. But I know a lot of schools in Austria who give them praying rooms. And then they say, yeah, it's praying rooms for boys and girls and for Christians and Muslims. And finally, it's praying rooms just for Muslim boys. Everybody else has to stay out of this. And they take step by step. And the government is going back step by step. And it's very, very important that we need to make a stop line. That, okay, no praying rooms in Austrian public schools.
Yes.
Finished. No halal food in Austrian public schools. We have to do this stop line.
Yes, absolutely, because Islam has no brake pedal. It doesn't stop. It keeps advancing until all is, for instance, in one German class I was reading that the teacher actually said, you know, there are 3 children here who are, you know, fasting for Ramadan. In the doctrine, it says age 7 this begins. And at age 10, they can be beaten for not participating. That is what the doctrine says. So she said, well, these children, and they were 10-year-olds, are not allowed to eat or drink. And so the entire class was not allowed to eat or drink. It was ridiculous. There should be no child at all. This is a Western country, you know, and our laws are that, you know, there should not be child abuse. And to have a child go, particularly in the summer, all day with no food, no water, this isn't good. This isn't healthy for them.
Yeah, yeah. But you know, it's also very important that, especially in Ramadan, but all the time, the Muslim kids try to convince the not Muslim kids to convert to Islam. I think I have 3, 4, 5 kids who are not Islamic, but they convert, and the parents don't know it.
Yes.
And it's already on TikTok, like, oh, I want to convert to Islam, but need I to tell it to the parents? And then, no, you don't need to tell, and something like that. And so it's not just that they are getting more kids, and that is the refugees who are coming. Also, a lot of people who are converting to Islam.
Yes. In the UK, there's an MP by the name of Robert Jenrick. And I've tried to send him a note on X because he's quite upset, rightfully so, about what's happening in the prison system. That there are so many, you know, Muslims in it that demanding that people convert, because if they don't convert, they're going to end up abused. And so people are converting in the jails, and they're saying this is a real problem, that so many people are feeling that they have to, for their own safety, they have to convert to Islam. And I say, what about the schools? These are also institutions. Are you not looking at the pressure that is being put on children? I've seen small children, again, TikTok videos of children converting in a classroom, and there'll be a gathering of Muslim children around one, and the child knows nothing. Now, with Judaism, with Christianity, there's study involved. They have to know what they're doing, you know, catechisms and things like this before they make what is a very big step. But if you want to leave Christianity or Judaism, you are also free to do that, freedom of religion. Now, with Islam, there is no previous teaching. Just say the Shahada, and that's it. Now you're a Muslim. But
yeah, you know, I have a lot of stories of this converting to Islam in my school. But the last story I could hear was in a primary school. 8-year-old boy was convincing an 8-year-old Catholic Austrian girl to say the Shahada.
Oh no!
And then he told this girl every day, now you are Muslim, you have to wear hijab. Now you are Muslim, you have to eat halal. Now you are Muslim, you have to pray. And the girl was coming home to her mother and said, oh, Mama, what should I tell? I just said what he told me to say, and now I need to do this, I need to do this. And the mother was going to school and said, it's not possible what's happening here. But the school said, oh, sorry, but we cannot look at everything.
Well, the thing is that with Islam, there's no exit. The doctrine says death to apostates. And while that might not be happening here yet, it certainly happens in Islamic countries on a regular basis. And, you know, we read stories about people who have, for instance, left Christianity and converted to Islam, and that's fine, no problem. But if they leave Islam and convert to Christianity, it's an entirely different case. In the UK, there was an example of a young man who had converted to Islam and then later attacked a well-known woman, Hatun is her name, and she had converted from Islam to Christianity. And he felt that it was all right for him to convert, but not for her, because Islam does not allow apostasy. Once you're in, you can't get out. But it's so easy to get in. You just say the Shahada, and you're not taught anything until after you've already done that.
Yeah, yeah.
So what about the school textbooks? What are you finding there? How is Islam being presented?
Islam is presented in the school books, in the schools, very peaceful, very nice, very good. And the Catholic Church, the Christianity, is presented very, very badly, like the cross, I don't know, Kreuzzüge, Kreuzritter, and the fighting Protestants against Catholics. And oh, we are the baddest people you can imagine on the books. The white people are so bad, the colored people, and the Muslim people are so nice. This is in nearly every book in in Austria.
Yeah, that's exactly what's happening in the West as well. But even if you go on an online shopping, there are some online shopping platforms, and you can look up Islam, and you will find book after book after book. And you know what? The truth doesn't matter. I see many beautiful lies, and they are published. But books that tell the truth, for instance, the book by Peter McLaughlin, and it's called Easy Meat. It was about the grooming gangs, and that was published in 2015. Now, it was well known what was happening with grooming gangs, and I won't use the word because, you know, the video might get taken down. But these gangs that were, you know, sexually abusing these young girls in the UK, it was so well documented. The book was not sensationalist at all. It was very factual. Everything was documented. But this well-known platform took the book down in 2019. They would not list that book. Now, that is a true book, everything in it true, everything referenced, and they take that book away. Then 6 years later, they're going, oh, grooming gangs. We didn't know about grooming gangs. Well, why do the politicians not know? They don't want to know because this is willful blindness. There are thousands of people now who are speaking about these problems, people like you and I, and the politicians are choosing to ignore it. They don't answer letters. They don't speak about it in public as if it's going to go away. But this is a problem of their making. And the only way to address it has to come from them. It's not possible for the people to do anything about this except talk about it.
Yes.
You know, so we try to educate people. So what are your suggestions for action?
What we need to do now, I think we cannot throw out all Muslims out of Europe or out of Austria. No. We have to try that they live Islam very liberal, like a lot of people live Catholic Church or that Christianity like liberal. And for this, we need to put a lot of red lines. Like I told before, no praying rooms, no hijab in school, no hijab in official working positions, like no free time in the Islamic special days, no abayas at school. Like, I don't know. I think if you know the doctrine and you think, you will find a lot of points where you can turn around. And if you turn, this will change the society. Like equal rights for men and women, no child marriage, a very long prison punishment if somebody cuts a girl.
Yes. You know, and the thing is that this is when a person comes to the country, one of the problems, of course, is they're told immediately that it's Islamophobic. So if you believe this, right away you're on the defensive and you're afraid. Now, this never used to happen. This is something we're seeing in the last 20 years. You know, the Organization of Islamic Cooperation has started publishing every year this Islamophobia book. Countries are adopting Islamophobia recognition days, things like this. So they are making something into a reality that never was before. The Western countries were the most tolerant countries, which is why everyone wanted to come here. And now they're being portrayed as if they are oppressors and colonialists and Islamophobes. And this is not so. And we have to stop accepting this kind of talk and behavior on the part of our politicians, because they are kowtowing. I don't know whether it is vote buying or what they are doing, but they need to strengthen our position and stand by it. Now, if you look back, for example, say 20 years ago, I'm talking quite a lot here, but in any time you want. But if you look back, say 20, 30 years ago, there were many Muslims living in the country, but we didn't have prayer rooms, we didn't have halal, we didn't have Islamic finance, we didn't have any of these things. And the reason we didn't have them is because of the Islamic principle of darura. And that is that necessity, it overcomes obligation. So if there is no halal food or there is no Islamic finance, then of course you can't use it. It's not there and there is no sin on you. But as soon as our politicians approve this, they approve Islamic finance, the school approves the prayer room.
Yes.
Now the Muslims are obligated to do it because we have provided it. We have done this.
Yes, but it's so simple because phobia is unreasonable fear. So Islam and to be afraid about Islamic society, it's not without reason. So this name Islamophobia is a stupid word.
Of course. Yes, it is.
It's very easy.
Yes, you and I know how much of the doctrine is about jihad. We know that the Islamic tax, the zakat that is required to pay every year, that it has 8 categories. One of those categories is the cause of Allah, it is jihad, to those who are serving jihad in voluntary capacities. So this is all part of the doctrine forever and ever, that there will be ongoing jihad against the unbeliever. And, this is part of the doctrine every bit as much as wearing a hijab. So like when I say that, Islam has no break, how far do our politicians want to go in accommodating the doctrine of Islam? Because if they want to go all the way, we will be living in an Islamic country.
Yes, true.
Yes. So, and, the same thing is happening with school books here. We have the activist Islamic organizations that are providing pounds and pounds of material, exercises, videos, sending it to the schools, and the schools are incorporating all of this in their curriculums, and they are teaching it to the children. And now we're having children converting in the classroom when they know nothing about the doctrine, and it is a real shame.
Yes.
You've written a book about this. Now the book is in German, and
yes, the book is in German. Yeah. I have the book here. I'm still trying to make it also in English, but I did not find until now. Now already, I was asking my daughter, because she was living 1 year in the United States, going to a high school. I was asking her, maybe she will try to translate that we will have the book also in English. But until now, it's just in German, and it's written very easy. It's just stories what really happen in schools. Most of the stories happened in my school, and some explanations about Islamic rules, about what can we do, how can we change. And I think if you know little German, I can tell you it's nice to read. It's easy to read. So it's a good book, I think. I know the writer.
Wow, you certainly do. And you've had 40 years in the school system, and many of them also as a principal. So if anybody knows, you know. And I've really enjoyed our talk today. And I don't speak German. I did spend 3 weeks in Germany back in 1974. So I know what Germany is like when German is German,
Yes.
And I was also in Austria and all around Europe, actually, in 1974. And when the European countries were European, and they were very wonderful countries, very tolerant countries, but that doesn't mean that they need to turn into Islam, because that's not the Western way. There's not freedom. And it's not tolerant, really. So
yes. So if you want to keep Europe and Austria and Vienna a tolerant state and a tolerant area, we need to do something, because already in some streets of Vienna, you cannot imagine that you are in Europe.
Yes, that's right. And the thing is that when we adopt Sharia, which is what I'm trying to say here, when we adopt all of these practices, what we become is less tolerant. You know, you need to tighten up your hijab.
Yes.
You can't go swimming. No, you can't go singing. This is what happens when you adopt Sharia, and this is not tolerant. And there is not freedom of religion. There is not equality between men and women. And these are not things that are consistent with Western law. So they
Yes, we all know this sentence. If you want to save the tolerant world, you need to be intolerant against the intolerance.
Yes.
And I think this sentence was made for the Islamic world. If you don't want to be Islamic world, we have to put a red line.
Yes. Well, thank you very, very much for meeting.
Thank you very much. Wish you a good day. Thank you.
I really appreciate it. Thank you again.
Thank you. Bye.